An exhaust. It's the first mod that most riders make, and there's plenty of benefits. You typically save weight, gain a small amount of power, and make your bike look better. But for me, it's mostly about the sound and tone that an exhaust brings to the table that adds real character to your bike. There is an issue, however. A full exhaust from most reputable brands is north of $1,500 to $2,000 for some bikes, but the cheap Amazon exhausts sound terrible and usually don't even fit. Well, what if I told you there was an exhaust that sounded great, looked great, and fit great, all for less than some slip-ons? And I have one. Well, really I've had three. We are, of course, talking about Delkevic. And fair warning, you're going to hear a lot of exhaust notes in this video. I also want to make it clear that I have had some direct contact with Delkevic professionally in the past, which I will touch on later, but this video is in no way, shape, or form sponsored or endorsed by Delkevic. They do not even know about my channel, along with the majority of people on YouTube, let alone the video. To understand why I like Delkevic, we need to rewind to when I got my CB 1100. I was in college and I had just applied for a job at a motorcycle dealer. When I walked in, they had a beautiful 2014 CB 1100 for sale. I happened to be in the market for a new bike and couldn't resist. If you've seen them or been around them, you know that the CBs are breathtaking bikes. But there was one thing I disliked. It was quiet. Dead quiet. While I am absolutely against the people trying to be as loud as humanly possible, a silent bike is just hard for me to ride. So I looked into exhaust. The CB is a pretty obscure bike, and the only exhaust I found were Japanese. They looked sick, but they were over $1,000, and I didn't really have that kind of money to spend on it. Eventually, I stumbled onto Delkevic's website and decided to do some searching. Not only did they have an exhaust, but they had multiple styles, and a full system was around $500. I thought about it and decided this was the route I wanted to go. A week later, my exhaust came in, and I installed it as soon as I had time. The CB 1100 already has a very sharp presence. But now? This is how it should sound. It was louder, but tastefully so. Most importantly, it didn't sacrifice tone and allowed this very unique motor to make a very unique sound for an inline 4. Now, I can sit here and listen to this all day, and I'm sure you could too, but we're just getting started. A year or so later, I got a CBR 1100 XX, also known as the Honda Blackbird, another large displacement Honda with a demanding presence and an impressive reputation. Like the CB, I got it with a stock exhaust. I do think the Bird's stock exhaust looks really cool and has a pretty good tone to it. And one of the reasons I think it looks cool is because the back of it looks like a minigun barrel. But they are absolutely massive and quiet. And you all know by now how I feel about that. So I started looking at exhaust and wasn't finding much. The Blackbird isn't a super rare bike, but it was a late 90s, early 2000s bike, and most of the aftermarket support has long since waned off. In my search, I decided yet again to give Delkevic's website a try, and to my astonishment, they had over 2 pages of options, including different mufflers, different header layouts, etc. I ended up going with the 4:2:1 carbon fiber can option. And yes, it is actual, real carbon fiber, not that cheap print stuff you get off Amazon. I think it sounds pretty good, but you take a listen and tell me what you think. also want to make mention that while Delkevic likely won't make as much power as an Apropovich or a Graves, they still do make power. I had the bird dyno tuned with the only real mod being the exhaust itself, and it went from 129 horsepower to 140 at the wheel, which isn't terrible for a bike as old as me, nor is it bad for an exhaust that cost only $500. You may have also noticed a slight pattern here. Both of these bikes aren't terribly common, but Delkevic was not only making exhaust for them, but offering multiple options too. So it may not sound too far-fetched when I tell you the third bike I got an exhaust for, my 1978 Kawasaki KZ650. This is what turned me into a huge Delkevic fan. The bike is currently down for a rebuild, but I felt it's worth mentioning because Delkevic is making exhaust for more obscure bikes that typically don't have any options. Also super cool is that exhaust actually has 3 settings. You can have both baffles in, giving you a nearly stock sound, remove one for a louder but still reasonable sound, or just fucking blow it all out and have a straight piped open megaphone just the way Kawasaki intended. I mentioned earlier that I talked with them directly. Well, for context, Delkevic is cheaper partly because they are a direct-to-consumer business, meaning that you order one and it comes straight from them to you. No middleman markup, which is where a lot of the price comes from nowadays. When I was a service manager, I wanted to be a dealer for Delkevic exhaust, and I spoke a little bit to them regarding this. While it ultimately did not happen due to reasons outside of our control, I enjoyed getting some insight into the business even if it was somewhat limited. I learned that, at least at the time of speaking with them, there were only 2 authorized Delkevic dealers in the US, and they were both vintage shops, which I thought was pretty awesome. Oh, and just real quick, thank you all so much for surpassing 700 subs. It means a ton, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like as it helps me out a lot. Now back to it. Over the years, I've heard of some people citing a quality issue here or there, but for me personally, I am 3 for 3 with good quality exhausts. They always fit, the pipes were numbered, they provided the hardware I needed, and they lasted. The CB1100 had its Delkevic on for about 10,000 miles before I sold the bike. The bird has had it on for around 10,000 miles or so also, and it's still looking, sounding, and feeling great. Oh, also, I did get a lot of shit for making the bird a single exit instead of the dual exit exhaust. Lots of people say the dual exhaust look and sound way better. I do think it's a bit subjective, and my main factor was weight and power. But don't worry, because I also have another large Honda, and the duals on that one are there to stay. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Rubber side down, and see you next time.